In our first episode, we examined how Manchester United became the subject of the most infamous, leveraged buyout in sporting history. A financial sleight of hand that transformed a trophy-laden institution into an interest-bearing asset. The debt was heavy, but the ambition heavier still. But even if there were some fair, if ambitious, assumptions in place at the outset, we noted in our second episode that things went off the rails pretty quickly. Too much was taken for granted, and the club's desperate attempts to catch up again were hopelessly misguided. What happens when ambition runs out, and the only thing left is inertia, debt, and dysfunction? Today, we pick up the trajectory of Manchester United in the post-buyout era, the chaos, the bloat, the baffling decisions, and ask whether the arrival of INEOS might just be the club's last chance to reverse course. When the Glazers completed their takeover in 2005, United remained the financial apex predator in English football. Their revenues dwarfed those of domestic rivals, their commercial operations were unmatched, and their historical prestige offered a magnetism few could rival. Chelsea had just been taken over and were spending their way to their first league title for decades, but there was no reason to suppose that they were anything more than another Blackburn. But the warning sign emanating from Chelsea didn't fade, and all changed in 2008, when Sheikh Mansour acquired Manchester City. What followed was a reconfiguration of European football's financial architecture. The age of the petroclub had arrived, and it would prove to be United's worst nightmare. PSG followed, then Newcastle United, as sovereign wealth funds turned football clubs into geopolitical vehicles. These clubs weren't necessarily even looking to turn a profit, they were looking to display soft power. United, in contrast, were burdened by debt and driven by dividends. While state-backed rivals developed vertically integrated recruitment systems and long-term sporting projects, United continued to operate with a revolving door philosophy in both boardroom and dugout. In the early Glazer years, United remained a dominant brand, but cracks were already beginning to show. The club still had pulling power, but missed out on several major targets, a reflection of both the new debt burden and rising competition. Between 2005 and 2010, players like Ronaldinho, Essien, Benzema, and Hazard slipped through United's fingers, while rivals grew bolder. By the mid-2010s, even the financial advantage United once held was being eroded. The reason? Broadcasting revenue. The Premier League's television deals exploded, injecting hundreds of millions into the coffers of every club, not just the elite. Mid-table sides suddenly had the financial muscle to retain their best players or demand top dollar for them. United could no longer walk into White Hart Lane, Goodison Park, or St Mary's and cherry-pick at will. Now Brighton could out-negotiate you. Brentford had better data. Wolves had a more coherent sporting project. In theory, United had the biggest budget. In practice, they had the worst purchasing habits. 2013 marked a turning point. Sir Alex Ferguson and David Gill both stepped down, ushering in what was billed as a new era of continuity. Instead, it was the beginning of the slide. David Moyes was handed a 6-year contract and a transfer budget. What he wasn't given was proper executive support. His targets, Thiago, Gareth Bale, Cesc Fabregas, became punchlines as United flailed in the market. Meanwhile, Ed Woodward, a former investment banker, stepped up to run the club's football operations. This would be like asking your dentist to conduct your wedding. Over the next decade, the names changed, but the trend didn't. After limiting spending for the first years of their tenure and relying on Sir Alex to squeeze performances out of an aging squad, the Glazers belatedly realized they would actually have to spend some money to protect their investment. United then suddenly started to spend lavishly, but without coherence. Managers came and went. Strategies shifted every 18 months. And through it all, the money kept leaking. United did not lack for ambition in the transfer market. But they lacked planning, insight, and often common sense. Ed Woodward notoriously said that United could do things in the transfer market that no other club could dream of. We all thought he meant attracting elite players while staying within financial fair play rules, but it turned out he meant massively overpaying for decent, but unsuitable players and leaving installments to pile up for his successors to try and deal with. The signing of Alexis Sanchez was emblematic. Acquired on astronomical wages, reported at £500,000 per week, Sanchez arrived with fanfare and a piano, but departed having contributed almost nothing. Compare that to the signing of Eric Cantona, a maverick bought for a steal of a fee, whose vision and swagger transformed the squad. Or Solskjaer, signed for £1.5 million from Molde and who scored some of the most crucial goals in the club's history. Now look at Lukaku. Acquired for £75 million, deployed in a system unsuited to his strengths, sold at a loss, then rebought by a rival and later resold. Or Fred, signed under Mourinho, but never truly fitting into any manager's system. Or Donny van de Beek, outstanding in that Ajax run in the Champions League. No, really, he was. But completely swallowed up by the Old Trafford circus. It takes a particular mentality to be a United star, ask Cantona, Robson or Keane, but the transfer gurus seem to have forgotten this aspect completely. This wasn't bad luck. It was bad governance. At the heart of the decline was the boardroom. Ed Woodward may have excelled at securing noodle sponsorships in Southeast Asia, but he had no footballing instinct. Richard Arnold, his successor, was marginally more discreet, but no more effective. Under their leadership, the club became a commercial empire with a football club attached. Marquee signings were often driven by shirt sales and social media engagement. The concept of building a team gave way to brand activation. Every major managerial appointment was a Lurchin philosophy, Moyes, to Van Gaal, to Mourinho, to Solskjaer, to Rangnick, to Ten Hag, each with differing tactical needs, none supported with consistent, sensible recruitment. Where money was spent, it was largely wasted. Paul Pogba was allowed to leave on a free transfer, re-signed for £89 million, then allowed to leave on a free transfer again, without ever looking as consistent in red as he ever did for Juventus or France. Jadon Sancho signed for £73 million, but did anyone stop to think why City thought he was better off out of Manchester in the first place? Ten Hag recommended that the club sign Antony. Okay, he looked good for Ajax, might have been a useful signing at £20 million, but the negotiating team managed to hand over £82 million for him. Did they check back with Ten Hag when Ajax set this price, to see if we were buying a generational talent rather than a useful squad option? We could go on at length. The Glazers, while rarely visible, remained accountable for this chaos. They signed off on the structure. They hired the executives. They approved the policies that led to bloated wage bills and underperforming squads. So whatever exit the Glazers had in mind, if they ever did, was rapidly overtaken. They could sell a small block of shares with no power, but trying to sell or refinance the whole club in the post-petroclub, post-COVID world barely even looked possible. A football club is just too chaotic to attract a bid from a pension fund or a global conglomerate. So all you are left with is sports washers and particularly motivated individuals. In 2022, with fan pressure mounting and the club's performance spiraling, the Glazers announced a strategic review. This was corporate speak for, we might be open to selling. It marked a stunning shift. For nearly 2 decades, the family had insisted United was not for sale. But as interest rates rose and pressure grew, the walls began to close in. INEOS entered the frame. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, chemical magnate, lifelong United supporter, and owner of cycling, Formula One, and French football outfits, negotiated a minority stake with majority sporting control. Remember what the board had said way back in 2005. Unless Manchester United shareholders have strong non-financial reasons for wishing to stay invested, they should get out. Ratcliffe seems to have those non-financial reasons for coming in as a minority shareholder. He's a local boy who says he has supported United all his life. But what's beyond doubt is that he likes to get involved in sport and make things happen. This was not the full reset some had hoped for. But it was a start. INEOS have taken control of a club with deep rot and massive potential. The squad is unbalanced. The debt persistent. The infrastructure, in parts, crumbling. But what's different is the intention. Ratcliffe has installed experienced football personnel. Budget discipline is back on the table. Transfers are under stricter control. Ambitions are being reframed around sustainability as well as success. They aren't perfect. They dithered over Ten Hag's fate and paid millions for Dan Ashworth to tend to his garden before briefly popping into Old Trafford, but there is at least a focus. Whether INEOS succeeds is still uncertain. The Glazers retain financial power. The debt hasn't vanished. A lot of it has just been converted from long-term loans to transfer debt owed to other clubs. Ratcliffe notoriously suggested that United would have been bust by Christmas if his team hadn't got the budget under control. This may be slightly exaggerated. United were never going into receivership or administration, as there will always be someone willing to lend more money against those cash flows, or even buy new shares. But what he really meant was that something had to change with the club's spending, and he was no longer willing to go to the bank to ask to borrow money to spend on free lunches and match tickets for 1,000 staff. The direction, for the first time in years, feels purposeful. United no longer seem content to drift from crisis to short-term fix and back again. A new, young, exciting manager, who the club is sticking by even as short-term results grow ever more terrifying, because they are convinced that the long-term gains are going to come in. 20 years of Glazer rule left Manchester United as a paradox, still rich, still global, still watched, but increasingly irrelevant on the pitch. Now, the club stands on the edge of something different. The mistakes have been numerous. The damage, deep. But the opportunity to rebuild, properly, patiently, purposefully, is finally within grasp. Have we turned the corner? Will there really be a title-winning team playing in a visionary new stadium in a few short years? Maybe. But we'd do well to keep our eyes on the road this time. In later series we'll take a look at the INEOS restructuring, think about the latest profit and sustainability rules, and break down the plans for the new stadium. Make sure you keep an eye out for those. We are Thinking Devils. Support this channel the way Ed Woodward supported his managers, blindly, but with enthusiasm. Like, subscribe and forward.